I used to make audio cables.
What audio?
Cables. That's kind of why I have my soldering stuff. But nobody uses audio cables. Everyone just uses like a phone.
Le Torvador, le Torvador, le Torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish, le Torvador, le Torvador, le Torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu, mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, ki el melech gadol, v'kadosh ata, le'torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish, le'torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish. Le Torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish, le Torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish, v'shivchacha Eloheinu, mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, ki el melech gadol, v'kadosh ata, le'torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish, le'torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish. Le Torvador, nagid God lecha, ola natzach natzachim, kedushat chanagdish, le Torvador, vadon agit God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu, Mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, Ki el melech gadol, Ki el melech gadol, V'kadosh ata, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish. L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu, Mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, Ki el melech gadol, Ki el melech gadol, V'kadosh ata, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish. L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, Nagid God lecha, Ola netzach netzachim, Ola netzach netzachim, Kedushat Chanakdish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu, Mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed, Ki el melech gadol, Ki el melech gadol, V'kadosh ata, L'dor vador, L'dor vador, netzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushat kanakdish, letovador, 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 nagid kodecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushat kanakdish. Matovu, halaka Yaakov, Mishkanotecha Yisrael, Matovu, Matovu, halaka Yaakov, Mishkanotecha
We have dwelled in all kinds of places throughout our history as a Jewish community. We have dwelt in booths in the desert and in towns and in shtetls, in cities, on kibbutzim. Our rabbis teach that what makes a dwelling place beautiful is not how it looks, on the outside, but rather what it holds within it. If it is a shelter for love, if it is a shelter for peace, for connection, for prayer, then as the book of Numbers says, and as we sing, our dwellings are good and lovely. So let us begin this morning, Matovu, page 138, giving thanks for the places in which we dwell together.
Matovu, Matovu, Alekayako, Mishkanoteka Yisrael, Matovu, Matovu, Alekayako, Mishkanoteka Yisrael, Vaniberov Kasteka, Avoveteka, Eshtaka Beheka Kocheka, Beyirateka, Matovu, Matovu, Alekayako, Mishkanoteka Yisrael, Matovu, Matovu, Alekayako, Mishkanoteka Yisrael, Mishkanoteka Yisrael.
Good Yontif and Boker Tov. I pray we all have a meaningful fast on this day and that we will find moments of reflection throughout it and resolve within the liturgy and within ourselves to cross over into a new year and a new way of being. We are, as you may have noticed, fielding some technical difficulties, and our congregation outside of these walls is awaiting us to make sure that we can get a stream and video to them. And so if you see Rabbi Silverman or myself dealing with these phones here on the pulpit, please know that that's why, and we're just trying to reach everyone, and we're doing the very best that we can. It is a day we hope to be free of all technological concerns, but that is not to be. So thank you so much for understanding. Joined on the Bima, as you can see, our wonderful leadership. Thank you all so much for being here. Stacey Reimrev-Lutz, President Gary Silbert, past President Susan Good, Scott Silbert, Terry Hunter, and Phyllis Altmont. You may be seated and be comfortable, and thank you so much for your leadership and being here with us today. If you are joining with us from home on WLAE or, God willing, on our stream, it is a good moment to take a deep breath and to create your sacred space. Make sure that you're comfortable, that you have access to the prayer book if you need one, and anything you can do to shape a space around you so that it feels a little different than just a regular Thursday morning. Wherever you are, whoever you are, this day's message, this day, is just for you, each of us to go on our own journey, just how and where we are, and just who we wish to be when the gates close. So with that, we turn to page 178 to begin our worship, and we rise for Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam vaed.
For the light of the sun and for the light within each of us, we give thanks At the bottom of page 180, praise to you, Adonai, creator of the cosmic lights. Yeah, we skipped a little, didn't we? Page 180. Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer hameorot. And on page 183, you love us. At the top of the page, may read together, you love us by helping us grow. You give us Torah, a ladder for the soul, words that draw us upward, every mitzvah, an invitation to climb. Forge and kiln and crucible to purify our hearts. You give us Torah. You love us by helping us grow. And at the bottom of page 184, Baruch atah Adonai, habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Our praise to you, Adonai, you have singled out your people Israel with love. And we join together now in Shema on page 186.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Amen. Please be seated. 188. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להוד על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
On page 195, as we prepare for Michamocha, prayer of thanksgiving for redemption at the Red Sea and all redemptions in our lives. And they shall know that I, Adonai, am their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might abide among them. I, Adonai, their God. You took us out of the darkness so that your light might dwell among us. You showed us your power to bring down the powerful, uplift the enslaved, transform the social order. You showed us your strength so that we might remember our own. We carry the Exodus vision wherever we go, lest we forget our sense of liberation, lest we lose the joy of breathing free, lest we grow indifferent and blind to others' pain. So long as we work to make you present, we walk the path of freedom. But if we forget to bring you into the world, then we return to the darkness. We sing together those words, Michamocha, inspiring that sense of commitment to remembering the Exodus and all that it teaches us. Let us sing together.
Michamocha ba'elim Adonai, Michamocha netar ba'kodesh, Norat tehilot osef eleh, Norat tehilot osef eleh. Shir HaKadasha, Shir B'kol Geholim, לשמחה על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, עובדנו מכה, יהודה וישראל. גואלנו, אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
We are bound to one another in myriad ways, and yet each soul needs time to itself. In solitude, we meet the solitary one. Silence makes space for the still, small voice. For as the psalmist says, deep calls unto deep. From the depths of our soul, we seek what is most profound. We continue with the Amidah on page 198. Please rise.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avoteinu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Vekoneh Hakol V'zocher Chasdei Avot Ve'imahot U'mevii Geola Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo Be'ahava Zofenu L'chaim Melech Hafetz B'chaim V'kotfenu V'sefer HaChaim Lemanka Elohim Chaim Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah Amen. Ata Gipor L'Olam Adonai Mechayeh HaKol Ata Rav L'Hoshia Morid HaTal Mechakel Kayim Mechesed Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Rofech Olim U'Matir Asurim U'Mekayem Emunato Mishenei Afar Michamol kapal gevorot o mido malak ne mido kaye o matzliach Yeshua. L'chayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mekayeh hakol Amen.
You can be seated. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written, and on the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. The questions of who will live and who will die, who will reach the ripeness of age, who will be taken before their time, who by fire and who by water, who by earthquake and who by plague, who will rest, who will wander, who will be tranquil and who will be troubled. And we ask these not only in the abstract, but of ourselves. And we know the answers. I will live and I will die, at the right time and also before my time. I will wander, and yet I might also find rest. I will be troubled, but God, may I achieve tranquility. These are the central truths and statements of the High Holy Days. This is what makes these Yamim Noraim, the days of awe. It's that we are vulnerable. Page 208. Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love, your reign is a reign of truth.
Amat, 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 amat ki atahu dayan, dayan umokiach, ve'otea vahed, ve'otea vahed, ve'chotem, ve'chotem, ve'sofer u'moneh. ותזכור כל הנשכחות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות, ומאליו יקרא וקותם יד קודם בו.
Page 212.
בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. בראש השנה ייכתבון וביום צום כיפור ייכתבון. כמה יבורון וכמה יברעון, מי יחיה יעבוד, מי בקיצו ומי לא בקיצו. בראש השנה ייכתבון ikatevu nuvyong som Kippur yekatevu Rosh Hashanah ikatevu nuvyong som Kippur yekatevu Miva heshum miva mayim miva cherev miva kaya miva rav miva tzama miva rashum miva magefa Rosh Hashanah ikatevu nuvyom som Kippur yekatevu Rosh Hashanah ikatevu nuvyom som Kippur yekatevu Miva Chanukah umiva Tkilah mi Yanuach mi Yanuach mi Yashkit mi Yitorav mi Yishalef mi Yityasef Rosh Hashanah ikatevu nuvyom som Kippur yekatevu Rosh Hashanah ikatevu nuvyom som Kippur yekatevu mi yani o mi yashir mi yushpal o mi yarum Rosh Hashanah ikatevu nuvyom som Kippur yekatevu Rosh Hashanah ikatevu nuvyom som Kippur yekatevu
Bottom of page 212. On Rosh Hashanah, this is written. On the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. Together, how many will pass away from this world? How many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age? Who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? Who will live in poverty and who in prosperity? Who will be humbled and who exalted? Page 214.
Und teshuva und tefila und tzedaka ma'afirin et roho ha'gezerah.
But through return to the righteous path, through prayer and righteous living, we can transcend the harshness of this decree. We rise on page 218.
Hekadesh et simcha ba'olam Keshem shemakdishim oto b'shnei marom Kakatuv ma'yad neviecha V'karaz el zeh ve'amar Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh Adonai Tzevaot Melech haaretz Kevodo Adir, Adirenu Adonai, Adonenu Adir Shimcha b'chol haaretz Anu kevod Adonai Nimromo Echadu Eloheinu Hu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Hu Moshienu V'hu Yashmienu V'rakamav Le'enei Kocha Adonai leolam, Elohai Yitzihon, letov adon, hallelujah. Letov adon agid gadlecha, ol netzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish, Meshivkacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush leolam vahed. Ki el melech gadol vekadosh ata. 228. Kadosh ata v'nor hashemecha ve'en Elohim mibaladecha kakatuv vayikbar Adonai tzavahot b'mishpat v'hahel hakadosh nihikdash b'tzdaka baruch ata Adonai hamelech hakadosh. Amen.
You are holy. Your name is awe. There is nothing divine beyond you. As the prophet Isaiah taught, the source of all might is exalted through justice, the God of holiness made holy through righteousness. Please be seated. Page 232. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu ya'aleh ve'yavo ve'yagia ve'yereah ve'yeratzeh ve'yishama ve'yipaked ve'yizacher zichronenu ufiktonenu. Our God and God of the generations before us, may a memory of us ascend and come before you. May it be heard and seen by you, winning your favor and reaching your awareness, together with the memory of our ancestors, the memory of your sacred city, Jerusalem, and the memory of your people, the family of Israel. May we be remembered for safety, well-being, and favor, for love and compassion, for life and for peace on this day of atonement. And so we say at the top of page 233, Zochrenu Adonai Eloheinu bo l'tova,
Amen.
Ufokdenu vo livracha,
Amen.
V'hoshienu vo l'chaim.
Amen.
Eternal our God, remember us.
Amen.
Be mindful of us.
Amen.
And redeem us for a life of goodness and blessing.
Amen. 234. Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avotenu, ve'imotenu, mekal avonotenu, ve'yom ha'kippurim hazeh, ve'yom ha'kippurim hazeh. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, mekal la'avonotenu, our God and God of our forebears, pardon our failings on this day of atonement, erase our misdeeds, and see beyond our shortcomings. Ki vayom hazeh yechaper alechem letaher etchem mikol chatotechem lifnei Adonai tihitaru. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu mekal avonotenu ve'yom ha'kippurim hazeh, ve'yom ha'kippurim hazeh. As you said to Moses, Ki vayom hazeh yechaper alechem, for on this day atonement shall be made for you, to purify you from your wrongs, and pure you shall be in the presence of the Holy One. Ki vayom hazeh yechaper alechem אתכם מכל חטאותיכם לפני אדוני תתענו. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו מכל עוונותינו ביום הכיפורים הזה, ביום הכיפורים הזה. שובה אליי כי גאלתיך. Come back to me that I may redeem you.
We continue with a few moments of silent prayer.
$246. Sim shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom, tova uracha, chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu ve'hakol Yisrael amnecha. Sim shalom, sim shalom. Barecheinu Avinu, kolanu kechad be'or panecha, kivor panecha, natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu, Torat chayim ve'avat chesed, u'tzedakah u'berakah, ve'rachamim ve'chayim ve'shalom. Sim shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom, tova u'beracha, ve'tov beinecha, levarech et amcha Yisrael, ve'et kol ha'amim, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. עלינו והכל ישראל עמך. שים שלום, שלום, שים שלום. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום. אמן,
We rise now for Avinu Malkeinu before the open ark, page 252. You're welcome to read with me as we go through each of these fervent prayers. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice. Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you. Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families. Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger. Avinu Malkeinu, kalei kol tsar umastin me'aleinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror. Avinu Malkeinu, enter the names in the books of lives well lived. Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness. Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings. Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption. On the bottom of 253, Avinu Malkeinu, chonenu va'anenu, ki ein banu ma'asim, asei imanu tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice and love.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chamol aleinu, ve'olol aleinu, ve'tapenu. Avinu Malkeinu, kale defer, ve'pereferav, me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, kale motzar, umasti, me'aleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, kotbenu besefer chayim tovim. Avinu Malkeinu, kadesh aleinu, kadesh aleinu, shana tova. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, kadesh aleinu, shana tova. Avinu Malkeinu, shema koleinu, shema koleinu, shema koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu v'aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu v'aneinu, ki ein banu ma'asim. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedakah v'chesed v'hoshienu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu v'aneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Choneinu v'aneinu, ki ein banu ma'asim.
You may be seated. These next few moments are devoted to preparing for the reading of our Torah on this Yom Kippur day. On page 254, a meditation for us. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, a meditation to remind us what we strive for, a chant that binds us to the chain of generations. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, a moment of purest solidarity with our people's hopes and history, an invitation to affirm or dissent, to challenge or believe, to ask why or say amen. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, flowing like waters that renew the spirit, refreshing and sweet to nourish the soul. Let the reading of Torah be like prayer, every word a blessing, every verse a conversation with God. The stories of our Torah remind us that we are quite human because it's full of stories of flawed and remarkable humans in whom we can see ourselves. It is the center point of our lives, just as Kol Nidre is the center point of Yom Kippur. And two, it reminds us as a piece of liturgy that we are indeed quite human. We will strive to be better, but we will never be perfect. And that is what God loves about us, each of us, our stretching and reaching and striving. So before we read from the Torah, we'll take a few minutes of meditation, listening to the melody of Kol Nidre that also reminds us we are human and God loves us for that, reassures us that our journey makes all the difference.
Our Torah reading on Yom Kippur morning is from Parshat Nitzavim. The text can be found starting on page 266 in your Machzor. We just read this a few weeks ago, and it becomes especially poignant on Yom Kippur morning when, in our own personal moments of reflection, and perhaps in our small communal moments of reflection, we're reminded that we are actually connected to our entire people, from the very beginning all the way through to the very end. And that those connections remind us that when we stand before God, we stand shoulder to shoulder, or perhaps on the shoulders, or perhaps beneath the feet of those who will come after us. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit, but I'll make sure that you know which verses I'm going to read, but it'll all be between pages 266 and 268. For the Aliyah this morning, it's our pleasure to invite our past presidents who have joined us up on the bima, Phyllis Altmont, Scott Silbert, Susan Good, and Terry Hunter. Your blessing is on page 258, and I'll ask if you can just rise where you are and recite the blessing.
Baruch Adonai Hambarak Le'olam Vahed. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai notei haTorah.
Amen. Verse 9. Amen. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem lifnei Adonai Elohechem. Rashechem shivtechem, ziknechem v'shot rechem, kol ish Yisrael, tapchem nishechem v'gerecha, asher bakerev machanecha, mechotei veitzecha, ad shoev memecha, le'ovrecha bivrit, Adonai Elohecha uvalato, asher Adonai Elohecha, Koreit imcha hayom. You stand this day, all of you, in the presence of Adonai your God, your tribal heads, your elders, your officials, every man, woman, and child of Israel, and the stranger in the midst of your camp, from the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water, to enter into this covenant of Adonai your God, and the oath that Adonai your God makes with you this day, to establish you as God's people, and to be your God as promised to you, sworn to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The bottom of page 267, verse 11. Ki hamitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzavcha hayom lo nifleit hi mimcha v'lo rechoka hi Lo bashamayim hi lemor, mi ya'aleh lanu hashamayma v'yikecha lanu v'yashmienu ota v'na'asena v'lo me'ever leyam hi lemor, mi ya'avor lanu el ever hayam v'yikecha lanu v'yashmienu ota v'na'asena Ki karov elecha, hadavar me'od, b'ficha uvilvavcha la'asoto. For this mitzvah which I command you this day is neither beyond you nor far away. It is not up in heaven, causing you to say, who will go up to heaven on our behalf to get it for us and to let us hear it, that we may do it? And neither is it across the sea, causing you or anyone to say, who can cross the sea on our behalf? Get it for us and let us hear it, that we may do it. No, this is so very near to you. It is in your mouth and in your heart that you can surely do it. Re'eh natati lefanecha hayom et hachayim ve'et hatov ve'et hamavet ve'et hara asher anochi mitzavcha hayom le'ahava et Adonai Elohecha lalechet bidrachav v'lishmor mitzvotav v'chukotav u'mishpatav v'chayita v'ravita u'verachecha Adonai Elohecha be'aretz asher ata v'shama l'rishta. Behold, this day I place before you life and well-being, death and hardship. In that I command you this day to love Adonai and to walk in the ways of your God, to observe mitzvot, laws, and judgments, so that you may live and flourish, blessed by Adonai your God, in the land that is about to be yours. This day I call heaven and earth to witness regarding you. Life and death I have set before you, blessing and curse. Choose life, so that you and your children may live, by loving, obeying, and staying close to Adonai your God. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Yasher Koach to you all, thank you, and you may be seated. And Yasher Koach to Rabbi Silverman on a beautiful reading of our Yom Kippur Torah portion this morning. While the Torah is out and in our midst, and before it is lifted and dressed by past President Terry Hunter, a blessing for those who are in need of healing, on page 271, but of course what is in our hearts at this time of great turmoil and suffering. Mishaberach avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham Yitzchak ve'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah hu yivarech et hachvalim. May the one who brought blessings to our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to our mothers Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bring the blessing of health to all those who are ill. Please draw them to mind or whisper their name at this moment. May the Holy One, blessed be the source of life and healing, sustain and strengthen them with compassion and restore them to full health without delay. For all who struggle against illness, let renewal of spirit and renewal of body come soon. And together let us say, Amen. Amen. We now rise as the Torah is placed before our eyes, page 274. This is the teaching of Moses set before the people of Israel as commanded by God by the hand of Moses.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה.
I'll now share a few verses of Isaiah chapter 58, our prophetic reading for this day, one of the most beautiful in our entire Tanakh. It is a passionate call to step outside our comfort zones, to look injustice in the face, to never fool ourselves into thinking that our Judaism can only be about ourselves. I invite you to join with me in the blessings, page 275, and following that, can follow along with the reading, page 277. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur, asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divrehem hane'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo v'nvi'ei ha'emet v'atzedek. Kira v'garon al tashchosh kashofar harem kolecha v'haged le'ami pisham ulveit Yaakov chatotam. Cry out from the depths, says God, do not hold back. Lift up your voice like the shofar. Tell my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sin. Lama tzamnu velo ra'ita, ininu nafshenu velo teda, hein biyom tzomchem titzmeu chefetz, v'chol atzvechem tingoshu. In verse 3, the people say, why did we fast and you do not see it? We afflict ourselves and you do not know it. Because even on your fast day, you think only of your desire while oppressing those who work for you. Hachazeh yiyetzom evcharehu yom anot adam nafsho halachov ke'agmon rosho v'sach va'efer yatzia halazeh tikratzom v'yom ratzon ladonai. Is this the fast I desire, a day to afflict the body and soul, bowing your head like a reed, covering yourself with sackcloth and ashes? Do you call this a fast, a day worthy of the favor of Adonai? Halozet somef charehu, pateach hartubot resha, hater agudot mota, v'shalach ritzutzim chofshim, v'chol mota tenateku. Rather, is not this the fast I desire? To break the bonds of injustice, remove the heavy yoke, let the oppressed go free, and release all those enslaved. Halo peros la ra'ev lachmecha, to share your bread with the hungry. V'ni merudim tavivayit, and to take the homeless poor into your home. Ki tireh arom v'chisito misparcha lo tit'alam, and never to neglect your own flesh and blood. Az Yibaka shachar orecha. If you do this, then your light shall burst forth like the dawn. Ve'aruchatcha mehera titzmach, and your wounds will heal. Ve'halach lefanecha tzidkecha kevod Adonai ya'aspecha. Your righteous one leading the way before you, the presence of Adonai guarding you from behind. Az tikrav Adonai ya'aneh, and then when you call, God will answer. Tishava vayomar hineni, when you call, God will answer. Hineni, when you cry. Az tasir mitochecha mota, shalach etzba vadaber aven. If you remove the chains of oppression, the menacing hand, the malicious word. Vatafek la ra'ev nafshecha, offer your compassion to the hungry. V'nefesh na'ana tasbiya, and satisfy and soothe the suffering. V'zarach b'choshech orecha, your light will shine through the darkness. Va'afelatcha katzorayim, and your night will become bright as noon. On page 280, our blessing after. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzor kol haolamim tzaddik b'chol hadorot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh hamdaber umkayim shekol divarav emet v'tzedek על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום הכיפורים הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו למחילה ולסליחה ולכפרה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד ודברך אמת וקיים לעד ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מוחה וסולח לעוונותינו ולענות עמו בית ישראל ומעביר אשמותינו בכל שנה ושנה מלך על כל הארץ מקדש ישראל ביום הכיפורים.
Amen.
We rise now as we return the Torah to the Ark, page 291. You may be seated.
Page 293. Because I was angry, because I didn't think, because I was exhausted and on edge, because I'd been drinking, because I can be mean, because I was reckless and selfish, because I was worried about money, because my marriage was dead, because other people were doing it, because I thought I could get away with it, because I did something wrong, because I'm in pain, because I wish I could undo it, because I hurt him, because I lost her trust, because I let them down, because I was self-destructive, because I was foolish, because I'm ashamed, because that's not who I am, because that's not who I want to be, because I want to be forgiven. God, bring down my walls of defensiveness and self-righteousness. Help me to stay in humility. Please give me the strength to do what is right. God, hear our call, page 294. Page 296, please rise. Our God and God of all generations, may our prayers reach your presence, and when we turn to you, do not be indifferent. Adonai, we are arrogant and stubborn, claiming to be blameless and free of sin. In truth, we have stumbled and strayed. We have done wrong.
Hashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dipanu Dofi, Havinu, Vahishanu, Zadnu, Chamasnu, Tafanu Shaker, Yatsnura, Kizavnu, Latsnu, Maradnu, Nihatsnu, Sarhanu, Avinu, Pashanu, Sararnu, Kishinu Horef, Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiabnu, Tahinu, Titanu,
You can be seated, page 300. For these sins, our God, we ask forgiveness.
Al chet shekatanu lefanecha be'on hasufratzon, ve'al chet shekatanu lefanecha b'yod'im u'v'lo yod'im.
The ways we have wronged you under duress and by choice, and harm we have caused in your world consciously and unconsciously. The ways we have wronged you through our thoughtlessness, and harm we have caused in your world through impulsive acts of malice. The ways we have wronged you by abusing our power, and harm we have caused in your world through disrespect to parents and to teachers. The ways we have wronged you by giving in to our hostile impulses, and harm we have caused in your world through inflexibility and stubbornness. The ways we have wronged you through lies and deceit, and harm we have caused in your world by making light of serious matters. The ways we have wronged you in our routine conversations, and harm we have caused in your world through envy. For all these failures of judgment and will, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, and lead us to atonement. We invite you all to continue with a private, personal vidui through page 309.
(316). Shema Koleinu Adonai Eloheinu Uz merachem aleinu v'kabel v'rachamim uv'ratzon et tefilateinu.
A few years ago, The Atlantic published a story that has always stuck with me, entitled Radical Sandcastles, which featured the impressive sand creations of sociologist and sandcastle architect extraordinaire Matt Callender. In a Callender describes how it feels to him to build sandcastles. He observes that sandcastles call us into the present because of their temporary nature, and so we get joy from them because we know with certainty that the tide will come and sweep them away. I'm sure many of us have built them or taken walks on the beach at dusk and seen other builders posing for pictures next to their own creations, or maybe just the creations themselves while the builders have gone inside. Echoes from earlier endeavors, evidence of people of all ages spending time creating something they were absolutely sure would be gone by morning. This building of sandcastles on the shore strikes me as a rebellion of sorts against the inevitability of change, against the unavoidable passage of time and weathering of all things, and against that false idea that we should only invest in big, powerful things that are impervious to change. The ancient world into which Judaism was born was a world of idol worship, in which stone and precious metals, permanent materials, were a token of God's presence. Build something perfect that lasts forever was the religious charge. And then you will have a sense of the holy, and then you will feel powerful yourself. Judaism, though, understood, even those thousands of years ago, that a sense of the holy and a sense of power was better gained in another way. For Jews, God's presence and companionship is and has always been experienced not in the permanent, not in the impervious, not in the stationary. For Jews, God's presence is experienced in an awareness of the tide, in the sandcastle that is delightful and temporary, in the precious and ephemeral moment when the truth about the world comes into focus, even if fleeting. It is very Jewish to build against the tide. Love itself can even be understood in this light. As Mary Oliver writes in her beautiful poem, In Backwater Woods, to live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Love, too, is a rebellion. Rabbi Chaim Stern famously wrote, "'Tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch." Joy in the face of the fleeting nature of time and love of finite things has made rebels out of all of us during the last difficult year. We have all been building sandcastles as best we can. Our sense of vulnerability so amplified by this pandemic. We had reunions this past year, waiting months and months to be with people we hadn't seen in so long, pining for the time when that first hug could be given freely without fear. And many of us were able to seize that moment, those opportunities to be together, even if for a few days. Sandcastle moment, a rebellion, and very Jewish. The porch concerts throughout the pandemic, such a blessed, joyful experience, just for an hour, but an hour close to heaven, hearing that spontaneous, soulful music. It was life-giving, sustaining for days afterward, but a sandcastle moment and a rebellion. And even if the song was When the Saints Go Marching In, still very Jewish. And most poignant of all, for many in our congregation, the sacred time spent with a loved one whose days on earth we know are numbered, and the depth of feeling is overwhelming. God is so present in that love. A sandcastle moment, a rebellion, for 'tis a fearful thing to love what death can touch. Appreciating a rainbow, the day when all of the flowers are in bloom all at once, a bite of our favorite, most comforting food, choosing to be outside on a beautiful day, a phone call with a dear friend, savoring the sound of a light rain, Sandcastles all, temporary, delicate, and the result of intention and care and commitment, rebellious joy in the face of mortality, and according to our Judaism, a moment fit for a blessing. But perhaps some of us at this precise moment are feeling exhausted and less capable than usual of generating that rebellion inside us. Perhaps we are finding it hard to build those metaphorical sandcastles right now, to find that blessing. Many have shared that with our clergy in recent days and weeks. We all know we should, and in previous times we could, but it's not coming as easily just now. If that is the case for anyone or anyone that you know and love, there is a good reason for it. Many good reasons. The big questions of the high holidays, who shall live and who shall die, who in their time and who before their time, owning our vulnerability, these questions have been at the top of our minds collectively everywhere we look every single day for the last 18 months. As has been written about often in the last year and recently by social psychologist Dr. Amy Cuddy, our surge capacity, the mental and physical resources that flood our system when we need to survive an acute crisis, that capacity is dwindling. Understandably, it was never meant, we did not evolve to be able to sustain that for months, only for short stints when we're in danger. Cuddy explains that the life-saving vaccines that became available last spring, with them, we likely had hope, if not expectation, of a cathartic moment of full release from COVID, a flood of relief of those we love will be safe, that the mass suffering and death would cease. But then the Delta variant began to take hold, threatening our children as never before and other unvaccinated individuals. Our hospitals once again began filling, and it became more and more clear that when and if that cathartic moment would come was in fact not clear at all. We have been humbled in the last 18 months, reminded that we are not nearly as powerful as we thought, and nature will have her say, and we will have to listen. And on top of all of those stresses, and those we have in our own individual domestic lives, on top of the personal and communal losses and the varying degrees of economic and professional and medical burdens we're experiencing, and on top of the injustices and inequalities that have come to full light through the magnifying glass that COVID provides, there is our city, this lively, inspirational, gorgeous sandcastle of a city we call home. And when an Ida comes along, after the immediate moment of emergency, when we all come together, transcending our differences and feeding and clothing and housing each other, we must all grapple with, then, the months of work ahead to rebuild after the tide has come and knocked it down. Knowing the optimism and perspective that so many in this community have, it may be hard to admit that we are struggling. So please, please hear this. It is normal. Studies on crisis show that this is a natural stage, and the struggle is to be expected. Danish psychologist Merit Wedel-Wellensborg teaches of the three phases of crisis. The first is the emergency. We in New Orleans and throughout our region know about that one. And the way this city reaches for one another during an emergency phase is something mighty to behold that the whole world can learn from. But that is just the first phase. The second phase is regression, when the acute period is over and people can then lose their sense of purpose and feel tired and stop taking care of themselves in the ways they need to out of exhaustion and a feeling of overwhelm, and experience symptoms of anxiety and depression. Then there is a third phase, actual recovery, moving out of the crisis toward rebuilding. Our entire nation, perhaps the world, thought we were entering the rebuilding phase of this pandemic at the beginning of the summer, even if we didn't have those exact words. So many were getting vaccinated. Our COVID numbers were low. COVID wards in hospitals around the country closed. And then we came to understand that we weren't to that recovery phase yet, that we would potentially have to start the cycle all over again, that we were back in an emergency and then to regression once again. We began to ache once again for our medical professionals and our first responders, those we know and love and those we don't know but are so grateful to, whose burden we knew would increase exponentially. And here in our city, we are also in the middle stage after Hurricane Ida. Power restored to most people, resources becoming more accessible daily, but still much is not right. So many not back in their homes, or their homes not back to whole. And we have a long way to go before we feel, and before our city feels, fully rebuilt. So perhaps one of our tasks on this Yom Kippur is to forgive ourselves for not being able to surge right now, for needing support to try and find our way back to center, for not having internal resources to joyfully build on the seashore just today. It is okay. It makes sense, and it won't last. And if what I've described is real for some of us or for those we love, another task of ours is to also fill ourselves up so we can make our way through the crises that are before us, so we can go back to building those sandcastles, laughing and loving fiercely, to being rebellious once again, and to being able to be there for others. And for that, our Jewish tradition can be a tremendous resource, both in its general philosophies and in its practices, because it was built for this kind of moment. Our tradition was molded by people who understood very well how unpredictable life could be, how vulnerable they and their communities were. They understood that they would need to cultivate their resilience, and even more, they would need to structure this cultivation carefully because they might need that support in the hardest times. And so this they did. We do, through a vast treasure trove of rituals and prayers, all meant to help us construct those sandcastles when we are feeling depleted. Every holiday is marked with the lighting of candles. There can be no doubt when we do that of the temporary nature of that sacred light. We say the prescribed words and gaze at the flames, and we let them burn low throughout the evening, and they are always beautiful. Our famous focus on food, the quintessential momentary delight, the apples and honey, the latkes, maybe the matzah, the feasting at special times, exerting energy simply to dine in a particular way is a bold statement about the power of the moment to have lasting value. We follow those recipes and we can be filled. The mikvah, which thankfully our community will have next year, and until then, any living water. Judaism asserts that this experience is transformative, and there is clarity to be found in that split second of held breath and deep prayer under the water. The hiss of the Havdalah candle at the end of Shabbat when the flame is extinguished in the wine rather than having a chance to burn down, a sign that sometimes light and life is snuffed out before its time, and it reminds us to pay attention and that our lives are intertwined in the healing. Even the shofar blasts, the breath in our bodies used to make a singular, spontaneous cry, a momentary sound, but it rings in our ears for hours, and it communicates more in a few seconds than 1,000 words etched in stone ever could, which is especially welcome when we are out of words. The Sabbath itself is an innovation of Judaism, a dedicated moment to recharge and rest and be instead of build, and find enoughness in our lives. In our frenzied, loud, overstimulated existence, is there anything more of a godsend than this idea of Sabbath? It is God's gift to us as much as we dedicate that day to God. We are invited, commanded to pause, and that pause strengthens us for the week of good work that always, always lies on the other side. All these customs gave structure and support to our ancestors when they felt their words washing away and their worlds washing away. And they can do the same for us in this time, right now. They at once help us appreciate the organic sandcastle moments in our lives and give us a script for creating them when we are too spent to generate our own. Our religious perspective has an enduring faith in the power of the finite and the symbolic to teach infinite and concrete lessons. And it has an awareness that there are times when rituals will need to act as a safety net when we have really just lost our balance. So perhaps the resetting and refilling we need to do can be sourced, at least partly, through our Judaism. Maybe it would be a good time to find a Shabbat practice of our own. Maybe creating a little more ritual in our lives, a few more moments to light candles and say prayers, customs that ground us and focus our attention on the holy. Maybe carving out moments when technologies that rule our lives are turned off. A leap of faith that there are status updates that need to emerge from within us and our own souls. This will look different for everyone, as different as the many sandcastles on the beach. But as a Jewish community whose tradition gave the world Shabbat, we have a legacy worth embracing and an incredible toolbox from which to draw to address a moment such as this in our lives. Our Yom Kippur liturgy, from Kol Nidre to Ashamnu to Avinu Malkeinu to Al Chet, are all expressed in the first person plural, all couched in the pronoun we. This is because our communal bonds are strong, and it is also because there is an implicit understanding that one of the hardest things any of us will ever do is admit when we're not living up to our own expectations of ourselves. And so we say we and our and us, knowing, remembering, being reminded that everyone else is also in that same boat today and in this time, that we are not alone. That is a source, can be a source of healing and strength. So no matter what your struggle is, please know, please believe that we are committed here in this place, in this community, to calling each other back to the present, to rebelliously loving that which is finite, and ritualizing our resilience with the ancient and eternal customs and traditions that we have been given. Judaism and Jewish community was built for this moment. And because it is made of us, there is no tide that can wash it away. Gmar Chatima Tova and Lashana Tova. Our president, Gary Silbert, now I'm honored to call you forward to share this morning's announcements and words of welcome.
Shana Tova. My sincerest gratitude goes to our ushers for this morning's service: Samantha Guichet, Kevin Wilkins, Brian Weimer, Gary Cernovitz, Kathy Lazarus, and Cynthia Stewart. A special thank you to Sam Guichet for coordinating the ushers. Joining Rabbi Bowman, Rabbi Silverman, Cantor Margolius, and me on the pulpit are Scott Silbert, Susan Good, Terry Hunter, Phyllis Altmont, and Stacy Weinrath. Toro is most appreciative to the families who generously sponsored the pulpit flowers, lovingly given in memory, first in Sam and Sylvia Pulitzer and Ruth and Mitchell Samuelson by Joyce and Sidney Pulitzer. In memory of Bernard Borries and Isabel and Seymour Harris by Anne and Stephen Harris. They're also given in honor of Cantor Kevin Margolius for all the unseen mitzvot that he performed at the synagogue on behalf of the congregation and community. Thank you so much. There's some very special people we want to thank that have made our high holidays possible, including Naomi and Stanley Yavne-Klos for their gift to Touro Synagogue, allowing us to purchase the new streaming equipment for our sanctuary. This gift was given in loving memory of Raphael and Kuni Yavne, Cantor Zalman and Anna Yavne, and Cantor Emmanuel Matt Yavne, Cantor Murray Bernard Yavne, and Cyrus Israel Yavne. Our gratitude to David and Patsy Cantor Worship Fund and the family, which made this broadcast on WLAE possible. And thank you to our live stream sponsors, Meredith and Mark Cunningham, given in loving memory of Peter Pierce. We want to thank Ron Yeager and his team at WLAE for the chance to broadcast this service to our congregants. Thank you to Sean Harrison of Southern Network Services, to event producers for creating such a personal and beautiful experience for our congregation, and to leaders and friends who have made this possible, especially congregants Lee Zurich, Brian Bain, Scott Saltzman, and Naomi Yavne-Klos. Thank you to our incredible musicians, Byron Tochi, Kurt Munstead, Richard Worley, Jonathan Gerhardt, and Jesse Reeks. And thank you to our sound engineer, Jeff Zelensky. And I'd like to thank David Bernstein, who sounds our chauffeur each year so beautifully. We hope you'll join us for the afternoon learning sessions that will be held via Zoom, and thank you so much to our presenters in advance who are sharing their expertise and experience with us today. At 12:30, we'll gather on Zoom for Southern Jewish History, Here and Now, with Dr. Michael Cohen. At 2 o'clock on Zoom, we'll hear about our powerful community-based programs in which our congregation and members are engaged, and to hear about future opportunities to impact the community and city positively, and we hope that you'll be able to join. More information and links to register can be found at tourosynagogue.com/HHD. Yom Kippur afternoon service with congregational voices begins at 3:15 on Zoom, following by Yitzchor and Nila services at 4 o'clock. Thank you to those congregants who are among the voices participating in our afternoon service: David Hammer, Tio Hammer, Julie Schwartz, Dr. Bernie Jaffe, Naomi Yavne-Klos, Erica Zucker, Isaac Jabale, Dr. Bill Procell, Zachary Wilkins, and Benjamin Wilkins. If you haven't done so already, please bring a bag full of non-perishable foods to service to benefit Second Harvester Food Bank in honor of this fast day. We'll also be collecting diapers of all sizes and baby wipes, feminine hygiene products, blue tarps, and water in direct support of our Broadmoor Food Pantry neighbors. Any of these supplies can be dropped off at Touro Synagogue Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So thank you very much in advance for that. And again, Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova. Thank you so much, Gary. Our services will conclude now with our closing song. Kaddish will be said at our memorial service later on today, which will be streamed and broadcast and also held here in the sanctuary. So this is an ending, but not really, as we all continue this holy day doing our own internal reflection and work. But before we part, page 318, as we prepare for this closing benediction. Infinite source of goodness, help us to see the good in ourselves and in others and in the world around us. Teach us to cultivate a discerning mind, to know right from wrong, and a listening heart open to love and forgiveness. Guide us to walk in your ways with integrity, ever faithful to the promise our forebears made, and may your goodness inspire us to do what is just and right. And now we'll sing toward the bottom of the page. Strengthen us, bless us, show us kindness, inscribe us this day for a life of goodness. Please rise. Amen.
Ayom tegadleinu. Amen. Ayom tidrasenu letova. Amen. Ayom tiftevenu lechayim tovim. Amen. 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 Ayom tehamseinu. Amen. Ayom tishma shabbatenu. Amen. Ayom titmekenu bimihin sitkeka. Amen. 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 Ayom tehamseinu. Amen. 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 Ayom tehamseinu.